So we were at the histories, which describes the background and events of Greek-Iranian wars, right? So the first historian of the world, Herodotus. Fine. Now, if you consider his name, right, then later on he had been known as the father of history, right? So known as father of history. So who had called him the father of history, right? So there was a Roman philosopher, whose name is Cicero, right? His name is Cicero, 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 right? Called him the father of Cicero. Cicero called him father of history. So who is the father of history? Herodotus is the father of history. Right. That would be the first case you can consider. Now, later on in the modern period, so this had been, see here what I have written, BC, before Christ. We will be coming to this one. This is called system of dating, right? System of dating. Fine. Now, in this particular case, right, unfortunately, they were only having system of dating, not a system of places or a system of the dating. Places of the dating, right? As like this hotel, that kind of thing. Right? Anyway, so the father of history is Herodotus. And then later on, there was a German historian whose name is Leopold von Ranke, right? So Leopold von Ranke, right? A German historian in the period 1795 to 1886, right? Purposefully I write here AD. Was known as the father of modern history, right? A father of modern history. Father of modern history. Right. So a father of modern history. Right. Now, so according to Ranke, what is the responsibility of a historian or being a historian, right? So according to Ranke, the task of historian was to describe the past as it actually happened or as it was, right? So that was the case, right? So or by and large, most of the what we can consider researchers, abhyasak of history, believe that the responsibility of a historian is, or rather it is always, must be describing the things as they happened, not his own perception, right? So that would be the case. Fine. So then about this history, there are some of the views. So there was a view about the history, such as the history repeats itself. History repeats itself. So this had been put by a German philosopher called Hegel. Right. So there was a German philosopher named as Hegel, who always said that, or who said that history repeats itself. Right. So later on, Karl Marx, who was a German economist and philosopher, both, also said that, but only slightly extended that particular sentence, that history repeats itself first as tragedy and second as the farce. Right. So always keep in mind these statements. Fine. So who said that? History repeats itself. History repeats itself. Right. Said by Hegel. By Hegel, who was a German philosopher. Who was a German philosopher. Right. And later on again, there was one, history repeats itself. Right. First as tragedy. First as tragedy and second as farce. Second as farce. Who said this? Said by Karl Marx. Right. Karl Marx. So Karl Marx was the German economist and philosopher. एखाद्याला जर प्रश्न इतर असा असेल की हे कसं लक्षात ठेवायचं, ह्याची गरज आहे का? राईट. Second as farce. Second as farce. FARCE. Right. So history repeats itself first as tragedy and second as farce. Fine. So this is what you can always consider about the history. Okay, what it means. Okay. Now, here you can consider, right? So, इथपर्यंत काय शंका नाही, हिस्ट्री रिपीट्स इटसेल्फ, राईट. सो जेव्हा ती घडत असते त्यावेळेला ती दुःखद असतं, शोकांतिक असते. दॅट इज फर्स्ट ॲज ट्रॅजेडी, राईट. सो रिपीट इटसेल्फ म्हणजे पहिल्यांदा घडते. सो पहिल्यांदा घडते इज फर्स्ट ॲज ट्रॅजेडी. सो दुःखद आहे. म्हणजे काय, मराठे पानिपतच्या 1761च्या पानिपतच्या युद्धामध्ये हरले नसते, आटके पार झेंडा फडकवला गेला असता. हे स्टेटमेंट आहे कुठेतरी इतिहासामध्ये, राईट. किंवा आपण बऱ्याचदा कुठेतरी ऐकलं असेल, राईट. सो व्हॉट वी हॅव हर्ड की हिस्ट्री रिपीट्स इटसेल्फ. That means first as tragedy. So that had been tragedy, right? What was tragedy, right? If you could have seen the Panipat, right? Recently, what we can consider call it as published, right? I don't know. Panipat, the movie Panipat, rolled by Arjun Kapoor, Sonu Sood, I think Sanjay Dutt, right? So that will tell you about the Panipat story. In fact, third battle of Panipat. Right. So 1761. So what had been happened in that case? The other Hindu kings or the different heads decided to help Vishwasra, and at the time they couldn't, right? Even if only the Punjab force could reach to that particular place or to the Panipat, then probably that might not have been defeated, right? So that had been tragedy. So first had been happened, and secondly, again, if it is second time repeating, so it will be the farce. So that would be the case. That means what? तो थट्टेचा किंवा हास्यास्पद विषय बनतो. पहिल्या ट्रॅजेडीतून तुम्ही जर शिकला नाही आणि तुम्ही पुन्हा तीच चूक करणार असाल तर तुम्ही थट्टेचा विषय असू शकता. And this is not only true for history, even this is true for our life as well, right? If you are doing a same kind of mistake till yesterday, or if you are doing a kind of performance, if you are performing a kind of thing, for example, if you were studying for either science or maths, and in the same way if you are going to study for today or tomorrow, so whatever you were scoring till yesterday will be the same, right? Or in the same way you will be scoring tomorrow or day after tomorrow, right? That means what? You haven't learned anything through that, right? So first as tragedy and second as farce. So by and large it is the only statement, so it repeats itself. Kasa repeat karte? So these are the two aspects, right? Fine. So that is the case you can consider about the history, tragedy and farce. Now here, if you consider different philosophers or different historian, right, who said something about each of these, right, or defining the history. So there was one British historian called Carr, right, very recently happened from 1892 to 1982, right? And he used to say, or he defined that history is an unending dialogue between past and present, right? Between past and present. So Carr, right, a British historian, British historian, 1892 to 1982, right, who said history is an unending dialogue, unending dialogue between past and present. Past and present. Right. See, sometimes questions can be asked that the statement will be given and you will be having 4 options. And it will be asked in a question that who said that particular statement? Kind of question, right? Or kind of thing. Right. So that is the reason you should always pay sufficient attention to these things. And these are the facts, right? So if I'm asking you to learn history, that doesn't mean you become historian. No. Right? Whatever history wanted to tell you, only that, just take that, infer it and leave it. Fine. So that should be the approach. Fine. So jack of all, expert of nothing. That should be the attitude and approach. Right? Jack of all, expert of nothing. चालेल. काही एखाद्या याच्यामध्ये एक्सपर्ट व्हायलाच पाहिजे असं नाही, but you should be jack of all as far as your NDA preparations are concerned. Right? So तुम्ही असं म्हणता कामा नये की इतिहास नाही नको, जॉग्राफी नको, राईट, फक्त इंग्लिशच करेल, गॅटच करेल, मॅथ्सच करेल, 450 तर पाहिजे. नो. Right? So because see, success of NDA, in my opinion, will not lie in the written exam only, right? if you could powerfully crack, or if you confidently get the success in interview, then and then you will be cracking NG. How do you enter into NGs? Right. So just by doing good in the returns will not help you. And as far as your preparations of SSB are concerned, so it is not a job of one day, 1 week, 3 months, right? Though grooming will be done in 3 months, grooming will be done in a week, grooming will be done in a week, in a month, if you are already prepared, right? That grooming is that what grooming will tell you, or that particular specialized training for SSB will tell you what should not be done, right? Instead of what should be done. But now you are preparing, so parallelly you should consider everything from that point of view. Okay. Anyway, now while studying history, most important factor, which is always necessary. Akshay, I couldn't get you. What do you specifically want to ask? Possibility of cracking NDA means what? See, 900 plus 900, right? Or 300 plus 600 plus 900. If you know it, better. If you don't know, 300 for maths, 600 for GAT, and 900 for SSB interview, right? Again, we will be coming across how it will be what we can consider divided. So how that how student are selected in written exam. Okay, fine. So as I said, your target should be 450 in written, right, among 900. So you must score at least 450 marks, right? If you all score 450 marks, I assure you, every one of you will definitely crack written examination. That's fine, right? Because if you consider, I have analyzed last 10 years results, or last 10 years eligibility or the merit of cracking the written of NDA. So it had never passed 450. I think only once in last years it had approached around 436 or 37. Fine. But you know what happens? So lakhs of students get appear for written, but in the what we can consider SSB, right? Only how much? 1:4. Suppose 450 vacancies are there, then probably only 1,800 candidates among the lakhs who had appeared for written will be called for SSB. So judging lakhs and judging only 600, 1,800, that could be again in 5 different ways, and that could be at so many different places, right? It's very easy. That means you must have that potential. What that potential is, we can consider, right? So that potential you can consider is the officers like qualities, right? So OLQs, officers like qualities, you must have them, right? So that will be the case. Don't worry about these things. So I think ASA is planned for it, right? So they have well planned about the training, right? SSB. You will be getting everything about that particular SSB, right? By the experts who had been in the armed forces, rather who had been the one of the members of SSB. Right? If you get trained under one of the SSB panelists or the former member, so perhaps you will be getting groomed everywhere. But if you lag in the basics, right? आपण म्हणतो ना, जर विहिरीतच नाही पोहऱ्यात कुठून येणार, जुनी म्हण आहे. So you must have to have. Then obviously, if you have how to mold it or how to get directed it in a direction, that will be always being done. So while studying history, you will be always requiring a system of dating, right? So a system of dating, a system of dating. Fine. Hold a minute. Of dating, right? You know, there are two systems of dating, right? As you know, the acronyms BC and AD, right? So BC and AD, BC and AD, fine. So these are the two acronyms you can consider in. So very first one, BC, which is called before Christ or Christ, right? Before Jesus Christ. So you can consider fine. So before Christ, you can consider. So it is a English phrase meaning before the birth of Jesus Christ, right? So before the birth of Jesus Christ. Before the birth of Jesus Christ, right? So the years before the birth of Jesus Christ, known as before Christ and denoted as BC, right? So years before the birth of Jesus Christ, known as BC, right? For example, Gautam Buddha was born, right, in 563 BC. I guess 563, 27. Probably. Okay, anyway. So Gautam Buddha born in 563 BC and died in 483. So 83 is 17 and 63 80. Yes, that's fine. Right. So died in 483. Right, or Alexander Great had been in BC. Right. So that is before Christ or before Christ. Fine. And second is anybody? The acronym AD stands for Alexander, Macedonian, right? Macedonian Alexander. Right. So AD stands for anyone? Okay. Anno? Yes. Domini. Anno Domini stands for AD. So, right. So Anno Domini. Now, this is a Latin phrase, right? So, this is the English phrase. This is a Latin phrase. Right. Which tells in the year of the Lord Jesus, right? So, in the year of Lord Jesus, Lord Jesus, right? In the year of Lord Jesus, right? So that's what you can consider. So the years begin with the birth of Jesus, known as Anno Domini, and they are denoted by AD. Example is Jesus Christ was crucified in 30 AD, right? Or some of the Krishna ruler or Hazrat Muhammad, right? Born in 570 AD and died in 630 AD, right? So that would be the case you can always consider. Now, you will be having a timeline. You will be having a timeline, a line on which time is being portrayed. Right. So the line displaying the events of the past time called timeline. So displaying events of past time. Events of past time. So here you have 0 and here you have say 80, right, in this direction 80, and here you have BC. Right. So obviously you will be always considering 1, 2, right, 3, 4, right. There is a gap, and here you can consider some number, say 5, and it is going on. Likewise, here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and right here you will be considering. So 580, here 500 BC, 4 BC, 3 BC, 2 BC, right, 1 BC, this is 0, 180, 280, here 380, 480, right? So this is the timeline which you can consider, right? So here it is BC and here it is AD. Okay. Now, here you have to always consider, right, that before Christ, right? So BC always counted backward. Always counted backward. Right. So what would be the first among given timeline? So 500 is the first. 499 is later on. So latest in this one, right? Latest in this is 1 BC. Right. Oldest is 500 BC. Right. Oldest is 500 BC. Suppose Gautam Buddha's birth. Right. So example we have considered Gautam Buddha. Right. So his birth was in 563 BC. 563 BC. Fine. And then his death is of 483 BC. Now, if you consider this age, right? Fine. So you can see here it is counted backward. Right. So 563 had come first and 483 had come later on. But nowadays, no. 2000 will come first, 2001 will be later on, 2020 will be the most, right, latest. Here 483 was latest, 563 is oldest, and therefore it is counted backward, right? Always keep in mind. Right? So example of counted backwards are, say, 500 BC, right? Okay, 499 BC, likewise, right? 3 BC, 2 BC, and 1 BC, right? Whereas AD is always counted forward, always count forward, right? For example, we have considered Hazrat Muhammad. Hazrat Muhammad. So he born in 570 AD and died in 632 AD. So latest is 632, oldest is 572. So counted, right, forward. So its example counted forward: 180, 280, 380, likewise 499 80, 500 80, right? So always keep in mind backward and forward, right? So this is the case you can always consider in this particular case. Then again here you have to see, these are the introductory terms which you will be coming across. Then you have a word called time glossary, right? You have a word or one more terminology called time glossary, right? Time glossary. Time glossary. So what is time glossary? You know, decade, a period of 10 years, right? First half, that means first 50 years of a century, right? Then second half of a century, असं म्हटलं किंवा first half of a century असं म्हटलं. Second half म्हणजे काय, 50 years पासून 51 years. So these are the time glossaries. Century, which is a period of 100 years. Right? If you consider millennium, which is a period of 1000 years. Right? So these are some of the time glossaries are also there. Right? So you can consider. So time glossaries, I will just write decade, right? Century, first half of century, second half of century, right? Or you can consider millennium, right? So these are some of the time glossaries you will be having, right? For example, first decade of 20th century means what? The time period from 1901 to 1950, decade 1910, right? So that would be the time glossary you can always consider. Right? Now, in this particular case, right? So there was a development of somewhere calendar, right? Development of a sequence of the calendar. So particularly you will be having a Julian calendar, a Christian calendar, right? And then Gregorian calendars, right? In between, you sometimes you will come across a term called a national calendar, fine? And therefore you will be you need to convert these eras. So conversion from Christian to, right, again, there are some important eras of the time, right, apart from the glossary, right? So I think before going for next one, I will just conclude only here as far as this particular section is concerned. Right. So this is what you can have. Now see, it is a quite interesting. You will be coming across from our inception, right, to different parts, right, which are very important as far as this particular part is concerned. Right. So I guess we are at the end of this session. If anybody wants, you can have screenshot.